Well, hello and welcome. I am thrilled to be here today to talk about the future of learning and how we are on the cusp of a new era for both technology and for education. It's one that's being fueled by all the advancements in AI and XR technologies, which is bringing about this convergence of our digital and physical worlds and offering us an entirely new set of tools from which to build solutions. Doesn't really matter how old any of you are out in this audience. In your lifetime, you have seen an incredible transformation of technology. For me, it's gone from encyclopedias all the way up to computers that can analyze complex systems and make predictions. But when I think back across all the technologies available, they have been largely passive, obediently doing what we instruct them to do. And so, of course, our learning has mirrored this pattern, with rote memorization and standardized testing being the norm. I don't think any of us thought this was the best way to learn, but the problem is we just didn't have the technology to make learning engaging at scale. If you think back across your education, I bet you can remember some of those aha moments. And you can probably remember the person, the place, or the experience that inspired you and made you curious enough that you just recalled it when I asked you. The problem is most of us have a handful of those, which means that they are the exception and not the rule. But those are the true learning moments. And by not prioritizing them, we ended up with an education system that is critically flawed. It's one that's making our jobs susceptible to automation and has led to a lot of disengaged educators and learners. If we had stayed this course and prioritized our one-directional flow of education, we would have, in essence, been training our students to become like robots. But now that the robots are here, we can turn our education into focusing on becoming more human. And this means leveraging what humans are good at, like awareness and higher order thinking and problem solving. And we can use our technology to complement these skills by performing tasks that are too tedious or time-consuming or beyond our capabilities. And by doing this, we get to focus on this freedom that allows us to explore and to innovate. But as humans, as intelligent as we are, well, we can only get so far. Which is why I actually think it's going to be the human and the technology and the machine combination, this triangle combination, that's going to allow us to solve problems that historically we've been completely unsuccessful at solving on our own. And we're already starting to see this combination with things like building safer vehicles or curing disease or even reversing the global climate crisis. And in the same way that this combination is going to help us with some of our biggest problems with humanity and climate, it's also going to help us solve some of the biggest problems that we're facing in education today. Of course, when you think back across all the tools we've had, think back across the last few years of what we've been able to leverage, and we have AI, AR, XR, MR, all of them living in disparate pieces, each one showing us their superpowers and helping us understand what's possible as we move into the future. AI is immensely powerful at adaptive learning or continuous assessment and content creation. And XR technologies allow us to explore in 3D and in these simulated environments. But I don't think the future of education lies in any of the individual capabilities of these technologies. If it did, they would have already taken off by now. Because I think the solution actually lies in the convergence. Because when we're able to bring them together, we will finally have the tools for personalized learning at scale. And we can do this through creating AI-driven mentors and tutors so that nobody ever has to learn alone again. Nobody has to stop learning when they're lost, and nobody has to stop asking questions when they are fueled by their curiosity and want to keep going. It means that AI can continually assess how we're learning across all the different surfaces, find those patterns, and then create content and deliver it to us when and where we need it. This combination not only unlocks learning in an engaging manner, but it also helps us solve four of the biggest problems that we're seeing in education right now, which is engagement, retention, personalized learning, and our skills-based assessment. Of course, all these pieces are living in thousands of parts all over the globe right now, being incubated in startups and tested in pilots, which is why I actually think this moment in learning belongs to higher education. Because we're the only ones who can bring together this central hub that unites the technology and the research, all the innovation across startups. And it can do this across every single vertical. There's no other organization in the world right now that has the flexibility and freedom to do that. And of course, those that are successful will unlock this personalized learning, increase new ways for accessibility, and be the drivers of innovation. And what we do in that space then goes bi-directional. It can go up and become part of the tools in the tool belt for the future of work for these students, and it eventually starts to go down to primary school, where we can then use it to help students prepare for university and beyond. Across the board at any level, this valuable transformation in education is going to help us move forward. But I think the most important step probably isn't the immediate one, but maybe the one right after. Because to date, we have seen our technology kind of fall into these three buckets. We're at the point now where we've been able to shift from passive to our technology noticing us or responding to prompts. And there are lots of things that notice things right now, right? My Apple Watch notices how many steps I've taken or my heart rate, but it doesn't really do anything with that information. What if AI could notice how you're learning across multiple surfaces, and then it can adapt the world around you to accommodate? And maybe this means removing stimulation when it senses that you're overwhelmed, or giving you more advanced content when it knows that you're ready. I'm not really sure what the end state of this particular graph is, but we do know that as technology progresses, the ideal goal is to make sure that it can seamlessly integrate into our daily lives in a way that connects us to being human again. And there are a couple of other graphs that we can overlay on this that help us understand this too. If we look at devices over time, this is an interesting one as well. Started with nothing not too long ago, and then we saw the number quickly escalate. But this isn't an exponential curve, it's more of a bell curve, right? Because our goal is to be more present. So we'll start to get rid of all the rectangular devices and more into something like AR glasses, and eventually into a space where it's seamlessly integrated with the way that we naturally communicate and connect through hand tracking and eye tracking, and eventually right to our brain. Overlay sort of the presence and human interaction graph. And of course, when there weren't devices, we were a lot more present with each other. And then that slowly declined as we got more and more devices in front of us. But we went from this, first-person kind of engaged opportunity to a third-person observer looking through our screens at the world. And so the goal is to get us back to that first-person participant, but to carry with us all the intelligent technology that we already value. And so, of course, together, if we just think about back to our original graph, the ideal state moving forward is really to combine the technological progress with less devices and more presence, so that we can somehow reach this intelligent human presence moving forward in both of our education and our workplaces. Of course, in order to do this, we're going to have to reimagine our platform as well. And so we need to figure out, since we don't have a guidebook, what we're going to prioritize in this next iteration of education. What are the pieces we want to make sure are embedded, because these are the first few stepping stones that need to last for generations to come. Probably the most important place to start is to think about content, because we need much faster ways to develop this adaptive content. And those of you who are in the education space know that content is often a tug of war between two things, right? We usually have to choose between scale and something that's interactive, both of which have their advantages. And obviously, our longing is to make sure that we can combine them in one way or another. But with scale, we often think about platform-based learning, which has been tremendously powerful in increasing access worldwide. People often say it takes a crisis to innovate, and the pandemic did just that for learning at scale. right? We had a global experiment where we suddenly had to bring learning online, and we learned a lot from it. But most of it is restricted to this platform-based LMS learning, which often means pre-recorded videos, one-directional flow of content, and multiple-choice questions. On the other side, our interactive side, we can make content that's a lot more engaging, but oftentimes it ends up costing quite a bit of money, takes a lot of time, and it's actually very hard to scale. So we had trouble combining these until AI came along. And now we believe that we can create this adaptive, personalized experience at scale with all the right tools. But I think what's exciting about these new forms of content is that it means we get to reimagine our assessment as well. And assessment has always been hard, right? We just haven't had the tools to break free from the shackles of multiple choice questions. And I cannot think of a faster way to kill curiosity than multiple choice. But that's just what we had available to us and the best that we could do with the tools that we had. But now for assessment, think about measuring through AI. We can measure communication and natural language and text messages. And through immersive technology, we can track people's body motion, their hand motions, and their eye movement, all of which tell us a lot of new things that we haven't before measured. But this opens up an entire new world for research as well. We're starting to see a lot of these tools be used successfully in things like medical training, right, where we can measure and calculate that muscle memory that you get and your fidelity with your hands. But there was a really interesting thing that happened right before the pandemic. So this was never an official study. There is no research on it. It wasn't, backed by any peer reviews. But it made us all wonder, and I think that lingering question still moves forward with how we think about assessment. I was working with the National Geographic Theater, and they would often bring explorers up on stage, and there were headsets in every seat. All 400 of them. The explorer would talk about their journey, and people would go there 3 or 4 times throughout the presentation. So they brought in 2 different A/B groups of students to do some testing. And the explorer was a marine biologist who studied manta rays. And so in one group, they got her presentation and just a video behind her. And in another group, they got her presentation, same presentation, but they got to use VR to go swim with the manta rays 3 or 4 times throughout that production. And in the end, they all answered the same survey of multiple choice tests about equally. There wasn't really a huge difference in the learning that they got through those experiences. But a careful observer said, but did you notice that during Q&A, their questions were vastly different? And so the group that just got the explorer and the screen behind her asked her a lot of questions about why did she become a marine biologist and how did she get her PhD? And the other group that used VR to swim with the manta rays, well, they asked only about the animals. What was their life expectancy? How many offspring did they have? Were they endangered, and how do we help save them? And so imagine if we bring these tools together, right, how we can unlock these new pathways for humanity that we haven't really been able to focus on or measure or support. And of course, it won't be too long before we start to just work directly with people's brains. And there's still a little bit of ways to go on this, but in the learning space, it could be really fascinating. So EEG data, or electroencephalography, allows us to measure the electrical activity in your brain. And the things it can help us understand about learning could be truly valuable. Things like your cognitive load, your focus, your engagement, even your emotional state and your learning style. But most importantly, the earliest results are showing that it can figure out if a student has ADHD or dyslexia before our current tests do, or even the student's aware of that. Again, we're in this state where we notice things. Our technology might notice that you have one of the 7 forms of dyslexia or all of them. But then how do we go beyond that? How do we use AR glasses to overlay dyslexic font in real time in the classroom? How do we use this technology to help put subtitles across someone's field of view through a regular pair of glasses so that if they have any issues with hearing, they don't have to miss anything? Or if they're language learners and they need it in their own native language. We're seeing some studies with autistic students helping them understand people's emotions through these glasses, or practicing environments over and over again until they are comfortable in the way that they need it. And so if we can figure out how to use this technology to ensure that we are allowing our students to stay in their learning environments with their communities, then I can't think of a better use case. Most of these students are removed from the classroom because they learn differently. They already feel isolated. So through socially acceptable hardware that adapts to them and helps them deliver content in a way that they need it, it will keep them in these learning environments, because learning, after all, is social. It's tribal in its nature, and it's extremely valuable to us as we go through that journey. So again, these technologies aren't quite ready, but when we think about the possibilities of how we bring them together, there's a huge opportunity for this next version of learning and education. In general, there is no doubt that we are currently experiencing a massive industry-wide aha moment. This new education is not just going to happen inside the walls of institutions and of workplaces, but it's going to be seamlessly integrated into our daily lives, fostering this continuous commitment to lifelong learning and curiosity, and hopefully the quest for innovation. One of the first opportunities that we have, again, thinking of platform-based learning and all the ways in which we can bring it into the next generation. Platform-based learning has this enormous challenge with content maintenance. If you work at a university, you know that professors are continuously having to book time in the green room to update their lessons, to re-record. I taught for 10 years, and I don't ever think I taught the same lesson twice, right? You're always wanting to do it differently. But when it's online learning, you have to go back and re-record it every single time. And so this becomes very challenging at scale, not just for the professor, but also for those that are editing the content, putting the content up on their websites. And so next time a professor has to make a change, is it possible for us to say, well, you can go record it and use the teleprompter, or we'll create your digital twin. And the script will still be the same, and your AI digital twin will read it, but if you have to tweak it later on, you just tweak the script, and then your avatar goes ahead and delivers it. Also, we can dump all their old lectures and videos and content and reading material and PDFs and PowerPoints into the LLMs so that students could, in theory, stop the professor halfway through that lecture and say, hold on, I have a question. And it will be intelligent enough to answer some of those basic things or think about different pathways. And they can do this at 3 a.m. when they otherwise wouldn't be able to get help. One thing we are seeing happen is sort of this idea of the AI-driven assistant or tutor. And so I don't know if this is going to be something that you have class by class or you bring it throughout your entire continuum of learning. But again, the idea that you can have this assistant that not only helps with probably mental health at its most valuable, helps you organize, it also can then help you, write that paper, spitball ideas. Think of all the things that you normally would currently ask someone else to help you with, but you have to wait until you can get that help. So this will slowly understand how you learn, the best way that you learn, and help you become successful that way. One step further, it might be kind of interesting, if we can think about having different AI agents speak to each other. So we have all been in classrooms where the conversations are great. People are animated, they're asking good questions, the debate is healthy. And we've also been in the opposite. People are half asleep, and there's not a very lot of conversation and engagement going on. This happens especially on our Zoom calls. But maybe we can have AI agents almost like NPC characters in games, but they're there to help ask the rhetorical questions, drive conversation, make sure that people understand the tenets of active listening and healthy conversation. So again, it's important to remember that if we want students to become more curious, we also have to train our AI to become curious too. So these are all the little pieces we slowly have to put together. But with so many inputs and outputs, we're also going to need an entirely new nervous system. We need smarter data and analytics if we're going to pull any of this off, right? So we have to reimagine the LMS and the LLMs, and we have to figure out how they can all work together to recognize these patterns and deliver things like unique learning pathways. Or bring subjects together we don't typically put together right now, like art and math and history and music and soft skills and technical skills, adding emotional intelligence to most of these different layers. We need to foster learning on a continuum as well, so again, we can pull it forward with you as you start to enter work, and we know when and where you're going to need some of these modules that you once learned back in the walls of university. So this is something that we've only really dreamt of up to this point, and we haven't been able to do it at scale. You're lucky if you get the person in your life who can help you do this, or that professor that gave you the aha moment and pulls you through to be the lifelong learner. But if technology can help us in a way that we haven't been able to scale with even more value, And we have to figure out how we're going to build that, right? So this partnership between humans and our intelligent system is helping us unlock the tools to get there. And it's allowing us to think about other systems too. So now this system about AI and EQ, suddenly it's an imperative and not a choice the way it currently is in our education systems. Because EQ is what's going to allow our teachers to use AI in a very responsible way, right? One that fosters all of our different learning styles and respects our cultural backgrounds. And AI can help our students develop the EQ that they're going to need for better communication and adaptability. And at the very least, I think we have to use these technologies now so that the students are fluent in them before they go out to their jobs. And by teaching in this adaptable way, in a way that's personalized, it will help them then develop the skills that they need to stay adaptable as the job market changes. And you've all heard, right? There will undeniably be job displacement. In the next 10 years, we're probably going to lose about 25 million jobs. And we have faced job extinction before, and we've come out stronger for it. With every new technology, there's, of course, new industries that get built, new jobs that are there. But in order for us to prepare, we have to first adapt our education. Because in its scale, scope, and complexity, this will be like a transformation that we haven't seen in our lifetimes, or even generations. And as we step into this new era, it is important to remember that technology is just a tool, right? And its impact, whether positive or negative, depends entirely on how we choose to use it. But this entire revolution isn't about machines taking over, it's about humans rising up. And I hope that we can work together so that we do architect this next step with wisdom and empathy and a commitment to responsibility. Because the future doesn't just happen. We create it, and it's going to take all of us. So thank you. There's only 2 minutes left. I wanted to do Q&A. We might have time for one question, if anyone has one. Otherwise, you can definitely catch me afterwards. Thank you.